Thank you, Pedro. It will be a challenge to summarize the recommendation and highlights of this great GFRID. The different insights and recommendations that we derive from this GFRID will be divided in the two tracks that we have followed, one on remittances and one on investment. So I will start with the main insights and recommendation we have identified for the remittance track. And I apologize in advance, we had to be selective, I had to be selective, so it's a selection, it's not exhaustive. This is the main issue, the main insights, and the core recommendation we would like to convey to the UN General Assembly on SDG in September. So this is our role to bring together this recommendation, your input to the UN Assembly very briefly, and we will provide an extensive report that will cover in details the different discussions that we had. So we have clustered 8 points. The first one is to say that it took us 7 years to recognize the migrant contribution to sustainable development goals beyond just the cost reduction. In the next year, we propose to go beyond that. This is again an invitation to keep us inventing enabling policies, services, partnership, more options to be offered to maximize migrant contribution for 1 billion people on Earth. Our second cluster of insights and recommendation is that one key component of the industry is data. So market intelligence, information to make decisions, transparency. Data is cross-cutting all over the places and for all stakeholders. As such, it can act as a non-ramp to 2030 achievement. The main area we have identified is reporting data from supervision platform is critical in monitoring both inflows and outflows, mobile money uptake, financial access. Currently, 6 countries in Africa are publishing data on a regular basis. Data, it is commonly admitted that publishing data enhances business decision making by RSPs, and there is a strong need for data repositories that combine data across markets on a single platform to enable easy access, but also to make connection between the different development dimensions of remittances. Our recommendation is that all stakeholders can continue to collect and make available publicly all data relevant on remittances. All stakeholders can work together to provide data at a more granular level to understand customer needs. This granular data should include details on flows and costs per corridor, channels, customer preferences, but also disaggregated by gender, by rural and urban areas. Informal flows must be quantified as much as possible, and we need to understand better the use of remittances. This entails demand-side surveys and industry studies beyond data collected by central banks. In this regard, both sending and receiving countries can collect and publish granular remittance data. The example of Italy as a sending end, Uganda and Kenya in this regard are commendable. Also, the Remitscope platform is conceived as a collaborative platform and already includes disaggregated data by corridor provided by 6 central banks. Our third insights and recommendation is about remittances and AML-CFT regulation and the so-called phenomenon of bank de-risking. The perception of risk attached to remittances is overweighted, leading to unintended consequences on financial inclusion for remittance users. the question has been asked if we should rethink our terms. Should we talk about debanking or de-risking, since the bank are exiting, let's say, the remittance of, activities? Are family remittances really threatening financial integrity? This is also a question that has been raised. It has been recognized that there is a need for evidence-based risk assessment, leading to proportionate policy responses to risk. Overall, compliance in the financial sector should be done sustainably, paying attention to financial inclusion outcomes, as outlined in the FATF guidelines. Main recommendation: capacity building for regulators on how to effectively apply risk-based supervision and foster innovation while mitigating new risks. About market structure and cost competition, which is a key topic that have been addressed during the forum, we have selected a few facts. The costs remain high on average in Africa. Intra-Africa remittances are still expensive, and sometimes more expensive than intercontinental remittances. In any case, both continental and intercontinental remittances are far above the SDG 10C target of 3%. In many markets, the remittance value chain is highly fragmented, driving up cost, and this is a major source of market deficiency. Most regulations have abolished exclusive relationship among operators, opening the market to more players, which is a very good news. Still, the licensing environment is still challenging for most operators, characterized by lengthy processing times, lack of harmonized regulation, lack of guidance for operator. It takes time, and it is unclear for operators that want to enter the market how long it will take to get a license. Our recommendation is to promote broader market interoperable instant payment system to foster competition, but also customer choice and outreach. Streamlined licensing requirement for market operators is also necessary to accelerate and clarify the condition for new operator to enter the market. Another point is related to financial inclusion. Enhancing digital access and bundling digital financial services with remittances is essential to increase financial inclusion through remittances. COVID has been a game changer, and now hybrid and cash methods are the new normal. Mobile money in Africa has shown how digitalization can lead to financial inclusion. In turn, financial inclusion enhances remittance recipient resilience and facilitates asset building. The bundling of financial services linked to remittances is essential. We heard about examples of savings, credit, insurance products. And last, bringing remittance family into the formal sector removes them from the risky and low-value customer segment. Our recommendation is to foster innovative digital financial services and also financial education, which is the next item we have underscored. For the first time, financial education has been brought under the spotlight as a major enabler. This is a very important topic that has been discussed during this forum. This is particularly important with the increase of digital methods. Digital financial literacy becomes a must for market players and also open opportunities to broaden the reach of financial literacy campaigns. Overall, lack of financial education continue to be a bottleneck to digital and financial inclusion. So we recommend that financial and digital education must be scaled up but also we propose and we recommend that private initiative in that regard to be supplemented with national financial literacy campaign focusing on remittances. Consumer protection and transparency, which is not directly related to financial education, but is very important from a customer perspective, is also essential, and there's a need to disclose foreign exchange, effective foreign exchange, so that the customer can make a real choice for the most efficient remittance service, given that foreign exchange is still a major component of the cost. Regarding climate adaptation, remittance contribution to climate adaptation and climate finance has been largely ignored because of lack of reliable data and studies that show this link. However, we know that remittances play an important role to mitigate climate risk, and especially for small producers. The role of remittances in this regard is also underestimated due to the broader misconception that remittances are mostly used for consumption purposes. The GFRID engaged on the possibility of new options and incentives that will enable remittance families to more effectively build resilience against climate-related risk and economic social fragility. Poor community, and especially small producers in rural areas, remain exposed to climate shocks, with many of them being only one shock away from falling into poverty. Our recommendation in this regard, as remittances are already financing climate adaptation needs, and the demand for climate adaptation and mitigation finance is on the rise, let's give remittances the recognition they deserve on building resilience in communities. So let's commit more funds to this. Let's recognize the role of remittances as a climate adaptation tool. Let's provide smallholders and other farmers with the know-how and access to solutions that can empower them to better anticipate, measure, and ultimately adapt to a range of climate risks. This involves the offer of services and products that rural producers will need to navigate the local risk of global climate change. Finally, an overall topic and a recommendation, it's about partnerships. Partnerships are essential to achieve SDGs. Multi-stakeholder platforms are essential to foster dialogue, as shown by the National Remittance Stakeholder Network set up by IFAD and other platforms, and also to spread knowledge. And beyond this platform for dialogue and spreading the knowledge, we need also more public and private partnerships to push the frontiers of financial access through remittances. In this area, we reiterate our recommendation, convening the public and private sectors and the civil society, including the diaspora community, of course, beginning from the local level up to national and international levels, to coordinate and implement strategies, policies, and action, and evaluate implementation efforts on a regular basis. Would like to remind, to quote Louis' words about the future of, and to engage the community of the GFRID. You cannot go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. Thank you very much for your attention. I pass the floor to my colleague Mauro.
Thank you very much, and I'm here to report on the diaspora investment track. I'm going to report on the main highlights and takeaways. So during these 3 days, and I'm not going to be exhaustive, so this list, as also Fred said, is not meant to be exhaustive. We will take the time to fine-tune it during the next few weeks. So during these 3 days, over 40 experts, diaspora leaders, members and practitioners had the chance to meet and discuss in 10 sessions. I would also say over coffees and lunches. They had the chance to discuss about the global growing phenomenon of diaspora investments, trends, recent studies, diaspora needs and ambitions, multiple typologies of financial mechanisms, and their lessons learned have been presented, animatedly debated, with the aim to comprehend the state of the art, particularly for the African continent, and what needs to be done next to fully maximize its potential for inclusive, sustainable development. The inspiring discussions over these 3 days found clear common ground of understanding that for ease of clarity have been grouped in 7 main highlights with their respective takeaways. The first one is on misconceptions. Remittances and diaspora investment are different in scope and needs and require unique and adapted approaches to fully maximize their respective developmental potential. We know what the remittances are, private cross-border person-to-person payments of relatively low value that are sent regularly by migrants to their relatives in their home countries. Diaspora investments respond to a personal goal set by the migrant to finance a business opportunity in their own country of origin. They can be either individual or collective and vary in terms of size, scope, duration, and regularity. The second one is know your diaspora investor. This is essential to move from simple transactional acts to real transformational impact. Diasporas are not an homogeneous group of people, and there is no one common diaspora investor. As every normal investor, each one has a different origin, story, level of financial education, investment means, and purposes. At the same time, diaspora investors share the common willingness to have an impact in the economic and social development of the communities and countries where their investment is to be made. Reliable surveys and thorough analysis of the targeted diaspora are therefore compulsory initial step for the creation of any secure, reliable, sound and effective financial vehicle which intends to adequately respond to the different needs of the various diaspora segments. Number 3, diaspora investments corresponding to different diaspora investor profiles and motives are emerging, but more needs to be done to improve reliability and impact. In response to the different investor profiles and risk appetites, some models have emerged over time, including structured bonds and related financial products, investment-based crowdfunding platforms, peer-to-peer mechanisms, and impact investment funds. In other cases, migrants intend also to invest in their own business and become an entrepreneur. More dedicated approaches and customized instruments to pool individuals' resources into secure vehicles and more transparent and updated information about investment opportunities and risks associated need to be provided in order to build trust among the diaspora and to take full advantage of their developmental potential. 4, realistic data on diaspora investments are still very limited, but are crucial for the design of enabling policies and the creation of financial vehicles adapted to the need of the migrant investors. While data on remittance flows and costs have significantly improved over the last 2 decades, although further efforts are still needed, on diaspora investment we are still far from having reliable aggregated data. No global surveys are currently in place to calculate the aggregated investment made by migrants on an annual basis. Therefore, more realistic data on the amount invested by migrants on a regular basis and disaggregated by country and thematic areas is crucial for a better understanding of the growing global phenomenon and subsequently to create the optimal conditions to fully maximize its potential for development. Number 5, enabling environments and harmonized regulatory frameworks are essential for reliable investment models that respond to the needs of the diaspora investors. Diaspora investments are growing exponentially. At the same time, new innovative investment models and vehicles are increasingly being designed and set up to respond to the different needs of the diaspora investors. However, these products often sit between 2 regulatory frameworks, one in the country of origin, another one in the country of destination. This creates complexity, expense, and other limiting factors that usually affect the efficiency of these products. It is critical that a multi-stakeholder dialogue is put in place to address issues such as KYC, AML, access to bank accounts, cross-border investments, and other forms of pooling investments from individuals and collective groups. This dialogue must include regulatory authorities alongside development agencies and diaspora organizations. 6, the potential of diaspora investment for climate adaptation is enormous, but still underexploited. Much more needs to be done to make it truly impactful. Diaspora investments offer a promising avenue for rural communities to build climate resilience and break the cycle of climate-induced forced migration. Migrants' investment can be, and in some cases are already, used by rural entrepreneurs to promote climate adaptation solutions, thereby improving food and economic security, fostering the adoption of the smart agriculture, irrigation, and land restoration practices. Despite all of these, very little analysis and research on this correlation has been undertaken so far. The attention is focused on migration as a response to environment and climate change, while it only marginally analyzes the relevance of the diaspora investments and remittances for the creation of climate adaptation solutions. At the same time, diaspora investors are not always adequately informed about the opportunities to invest in climate adaptation and resilience activities. Increased awareness about the importance to invest in climate adaptation strategies, matched with the creation of climate-oriented investment mechanisms, adequate climate financial education for diaspora investors and rural entrepreneurs can exponentially expand the amount of diaspora investments in impactful climate resilience activities, and subsequently increase the capacity of rural entrepreneurs to adapt to climate change. Last but not least, number 7, it is time to move from pilot to scaled-up interventions. Over the recent years, the demand by the diaspora for adequate investment mechanisms has grown exponentially in line with the new generation's impact and sustainability expectations. In response to the different investor profiles and risk appetites, some models have emerged under the form of pilot projects and initiatives with different degrees of success, which have created a quantity of lessons learned. It is now time to move from pilot to scale and involve all actors and stakeholders, the public and the private sector, the civil society, and the diaspora organizations in taking full advantage of the lessons learned gathered so far. Successful solutions need to be replicated, expanded, and adapted to different contexts. 2030 is just around the corner. Let's follow these 7 recommendations and take full advantage of diaspora investment for sustainable development. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment we're going to be closing the forum. So for that, I would like to invite the hosts, the organizers, the World Bank, IFAD, and OSA to the podium. So, Dilip, if you wouldn't mind, Christina, if you wouldn't mind, and Donald, for this closing session.
Well, thank you. It is really a pleasure to see over the last 22 years how the agenda has evolved, and now here we are, and it is so nice to see so many of us, so many hundreds of us here in Africa, with Africa in all its glory in this agenda. And I just want to say thank you to Pedro for taking the lead, to IFAD, and to the donors who helped us with this, with organizing the forum, and to all of you who made the effort to come all the way to Nairobi to participate in this event. And I also want to leave a couple of messages just to remind ourselves why we are here. I know you have it now, but I want you to keep that on in your pocket, in your brain cells, for a while to come. 656 billion is what we are expecting for remittances to be this year. That is only the flows to low and middle income countries. And in, let's say France, I have to say it, there are more remittances going in than they go out. And if you put France in the list of top 10 countries, it does show up in the 5th place. Okay, we need to remember that. So remittances are important everywhere. And there is a lot of flow going within Africa. 70% of the migrants from Africa are within Africa, 70%. So remittances are huge. South-South is important. Foreign direct investment is under $600 billion. Total official aid is $223 billion. If you exclude China, remittances are larger than foreign direct investment and ODA combined, and they have been like that since 2015. I think this is important to remember, which means that remittances are no longer small change, and these kind of forums where we get together to think about different players, to think about the plumbing, the architecture, and how to make most of these flows. These are no longer small trickles. We are talking about rivers and now lakes and seas probably, and we need to harness that. So that is one message, and in that process, I know you have heard from our rapporteurs about lots of specific details. I see global remittances agenda, you can add diaspora to that, as 4 parts. So I did it like this once, 1, 2, 3, 4, and somebody said, are you a Catholic? And no. But maybe I am. I'm not, but I am. Number 1 in the global remittances is data, just to get to know the facts. If we don't know the facts, we are in the dark, and the facts are looming large at us. Number 2, payment system issues. That takes us to fintech. The future is amazing, the cryptos and everything in the world, and then the geopolitics of it all, which I hinted at, multipolarity, interoperability that will not be there for years to come. The third is financial inclusion, leverage remittances for financial inclusion for poor people, for poor countries. And then the fourth is something that is really exciting. Leverage these small trickles of money, aggregate them, and then you can do billion-dollar bond issuances. Brazil raised $4 billion 20 years ago when it was really facing crisis by securitizing, using remittances from Japan going to Brazil as collateral. And on those bonds, the interest cost saving was 700 basis points on average, 7 percentage points on average. You do the calculation. $4 billion, you save $7 billion per year, and it's a 5-year bond at least, more likely 7-year bond. You do the calculation. That is one. The second is diaspora bond. We talked about that. $500 billion annual savings in remittances, sorry, in diaspora savings. If you mobilize 1/10 of that, that's $50 billion. Entire aid to sub-Saharan Africa, entire aid to sub-Saharan Africa is $35 billion. The entire aid budget of the largest donor country in the world, the United States, is $35 billion as well. So you can see the potential for diaspora bonds as a financing for development, means of financing development. And then the final part, if you include remittances in the creditworthiness analysis of countries like Lebanon or Bangladesh or Nepal, and there are 50 other countries, the credit rating of the countries goes up, improves by 4 notches. A 4-notch improvement in credit rating means somewhere around 300 basis points in borrowing costs. This is the part that we didn't discuss in details, and that is the financing for development that I really think we should be keeping in mind as well. So with that, thanks a lot to everyone, and let me stop. I'm so pleased to see this and to have this collaboration going. Thank you, Pedro.
Thank you, Dilip, for this. I love that you cannot stick there. You have to put and inform us and teach us even more. So I love it. Thank you. No, great to have you here. And I would like now to give the the floor now to Cristina. Our friend, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Pedro. I'll be very brief. First, I would like to, in a very humble way, to thank you all for what you taught me in these 3 days. Thank you very much. Yesterday, I learned so much in these 3 days. You cannot imagine. Yesterday I told Dawn, if by myself I had decided to get this knowledge only by myself, you would take me not 3 days, but 3 years. So you just compacted beautiful, in a beautiful city of Nairobi. Thank you very much. Second, I was asking myself yesterday, today, not so much in the first day, how important is the information that has been provided in these meetings, in these 3 days? How important is this information to reach policymakers? It's crucial. Because policymaking by default, believe me, I'm not accusing no one. Policymaking by default, when you start, you manage to have your feet in the ground. As the time goes, you start flying and going to the clouds. You need, on a regular basis, to have this type of conversation, to listen who delivers, who bakes the cake at the end of the day. So when designing policy frameworks, they are linked to the reality. So my question is, how can we at a country level, at a national level, promote this structure, well-designed and permanent dialogue channels? Because it cannot be once a year on the International Day of Family Remittances. How to create this, and I do believe that the stakeholders that are baking the cake are the ones to push, to pressure, to demand, to require for space to have this conversation. Because if you wait for the policymakers, it will take another 10 years. Third, it was clear after my 3-day learning process, it was clear that since Africa did not implement the MDGs, we start implementing the SDGs on a situation of disadvantage, clearly, a huge disadvantage. I would say that some countries maybe start the SDGs, I didn't say in a Ferrari, but better. Africa maybe in a Toyota Starlet without some tires. We have not built the resilience out of the MDGs. We started the SDGs. Then we were hit by 3 external shocks, you name it. Now we reach the midterm. We have not delivered. We start getting anxious. And everybody, I'm sure you notice, everybody is talking about accelerating SDGs. For Africa to accelerate SDGs, sorry, we need to build resilience. If we do not build resilience, we don't build that takeoff that is needed to accelerate the SDGs. In the process of building resilience, I just like to quote what my dear now friend from World Bank said a couple of minutes ago. The remittance can play a huge role in helping Africa delivering financial inclusion and consequently delivering resilience to be ready before 2030 to start delivering better the Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. And now, for the final word, Donald, I'll invite you to the podium.
Thank you very much, Pedro, and thank you, Leap and Christina, for those words. Just before I move into my closing remarks, ladies and gentlemen, I would just allow me a moment to mention, which I think is very apt given the conversations we had over the last 3 days, just mention the tragedy that occurred off the coast of Greece yesterday, which I'm sure you've all seen in the news. It was, as we sat here discussing remittances, investments, diaspora, migration over the last 3 days, the reports that are coming out of over 800 migrants, either dead or missing, I think 100 rescued so far was what I saw. It does remind us all of the not only very significant loss of life, but that there are sometimes some very tragic aspects around the conversations on flows on remittances and investments, where people keep leaving their countries in search of a better future for them and their family, but sometimes it ends in a very tragic consequence for the individuals and their families. So I would, if you will allow me, I'd just like to invite you to have a moment of silence as a mark of respect for the victims yesterday, but also, as I say, at this point in time, as we end 3 days, to remember sometimes the very dark side of some of our conversations. So if we could just have a moment's silence, please. Thank you very much. Please be seated. So, as I move to my closing remarks, just on a personal note, I've always been very interested in the issues that were discussed over the last 3 days. Having spent 35 years in development, I think you cannot do development without being interested in them. But I think the last 3 days for me have actually taken it to another level. I would say now that rather than just being very interested in it, I'm actually quite passionate about it. So thank you very much also, as Christina says, for really educating me. I think what I took away particularly was a real feeling that there are real exciting things happening out there, and we really need to sort of double down on them and really make sure that these really exciting things happen across the globe, particularly in Africa, and that we really see change and results, you know, as an outcome of this. But I am reassured. I do think, listening to the conversations, this has been much more these 3 days than a sort of a talk shop, which we go to so often. There's real exciting energy and progress being made. And I just would also like to reflect, we've spent a lot of time talking about remittances and investment, but actually this is not about remittances and investment, this is about people. And we need to remember this is about people, not money. Money's the input. Improving livelihoods is the outcome. So this whole meeting is about people, not remittances and not investment. You may have thought you were here for 3 days for that, but it's about people. And you'll also be glad, given you've had such a comprehensive set of reporting, that I've cut 2/3 of my closing remarks. So, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants, we come to the end of the 3-day Global Forum on Remittances, Investment and Development. It's been a fantastic event, and I'm sure you'll all agree that with me. And I would like to start by thanking all the panelists, the moderators, but all you conference participants for your enthusiasm, dedication, and really lively contributions. So thank you very much. I would also like to thank our co-organizers, the Office of the UN Secretary General Special Advisor for Africa, Ms. Cristina Duarte and her team. I've kind of decided as well that I think we should be a double act from now on, Christine, and we should just go around the world doing meetings together. And also to our colleagues from the World Bank, the government of Kenya, for its warm hospitality, and also our partners in this event, the African Diaspora Network, Crosstech, GSMA, IAMTN, Senfree, FinDev Gateway, and WSBI. But last but not least, I'd like to have a big thank you to our donors who've made this possible, the European Union, the governments of Luxembourg, Germany, Spain, and Sweden. So over the last 3 days, we've engaged in a really in-depth dialogue about the importance of remittances and investments for hundreds of millions of families in Africa and across the globe. And we've discussed in depth how migrants' economic contribution through remittances and diaspora investments play a crucial role in the economic growth and the improvement of living standards in the countries of origin. We've had 30 sessions, and we've investigated trends, discovered innovative remittance channels and investment funds, and addressed challenges in the remittance and investment markets. We've hopefully cleared many misconceptions, entered the digital space, looked at regulatory frameworks, and set up new connections and synergies between complementary actors from the public and private sectors and civil society. We've thoroughly explored a global market of migrants and diasporas, contributions that altogether is valued at over $1 trillion per year. But more than this, we've highlighted the human aspect of it all. Allow me to reiterate the figures. Over 1 billion people are either sending or receiving remittances and are investing back home, helping not only in the economic growth of many low and middle income countries and helping them achieve the sustainable development goals, but making really material improvements in the livelihoods of individual families. So the findings of this summit, of which we've heard just now, represent an important input that we will present to all member states at the upcoming summit on the SDGs. From what we have heard in these 3 days, achieving the SDGs is still within reach. This is the main development challenge from now until 2030. One of the pathways is to ensure that substantial multiplier effect will apply to the projected 7 trillion in aggregate migrants' remittances and investments to be received by their families, communities and MSMEs in developing countries over the next 7 years. This summit provided us with unique examples, lessons learned and recommendations on how to do it. The challenges have been highlighted: improved remittance policies, new technologies and cost-effective remittance systems, harmonized regulations for international remittances and diaspora investments, bundled with innovative financial instruments adapted to the reality and the diaspora needs. If rightly applied, they all have the power to make a substantial change to the lives of hundreds of millions of people. And I very much look forward to the implementation of the recommendations resulting from the forum and to the many benefits that concrete actions by all stakeholders will bring to migrants and their families and communities in the countries of origin. The Global Forum for Investment and Development and Remittances doesn't end here. It's an ongoing process which continues with discussions online through the dedicated webinar, culminating in a summit on a regular basis. Its next station will be the upcoming SDGs Summit on the 18th and 19th of September in New York, where we'll present the recommendations of the forum to the UN General Assembly, with the aim to make the voice of migrants and their families be heard loud and clear. So let us take every opportunity to support the positive and immense influence of migrants' contributions to economic development, and let's come together as a global community, renew our commitments to the SDGs and work effectively towards a sustainable and prosperous future for all. So just before closing, I would like to finish by thanking Pedro and his team, together with other colleagues in the IFAD office here and other colleagues in other organizations in Nairobi, because I think there's really a very big team over many months who have put this together to make it such a success. And I would like to recognize all their hard work too. So if we could just give them a round of applause, please. So with that, I would like to thank you again for your participation and wish you all a safe return home. Thank you.